Tuesday, October 21st, 2025, meeting of the City Council as a whole. I now call this meeting to order. Please be advised that FATV is conducting audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask that anyone else who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and city of residence. Seeing none, at this time I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
No flag?
Are we going to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'll explain in a moment.
Okay. Councillor Cragen.
Here.
Councillor Cruz.
Here.
Councillor Di Natale. Councillor Fleming.
Here.
Councillor Green. Here. Councillor Schultz.
Here.
Councillor Van Hazinga.
Here.
Councillor Walsh.
Here.
President Zarilla.
Here.
Councillor Boschman.
Present.
And Councillor Kuchar.
Here.
We have 10 members present.
Thank you. We have one item on the agenda this evening, but in the interest of respecting the time of everyone who has gathered for the appointments and promotions this evening, I would like to request a motion to recess the council as a whole meeting to be resumed following the appointments and promotions in the full council meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion and second to recess the council as a whole committee. If there is no objection, all right, this committee is going into recess. It will resume after the preliminaries of the full city council meeting have been concluded. We are now resuming the meeting of the council as a whole that was earlier recessed. I call the meeting back to order. The one item on the agenda this evening is a petition by myself to amend the council rules and orders to provide for a new committee on human services as detailed in the enclosed petition. I will allow for public comment for anyone who may be in the audience wishing to speak on this, but I just wish to first mention I have received multiple communications concerned that this petition indicates that the council intends to take a direct role in employee disciplinary matters. That is most assuredly not the case. The reference in the rule change to discipline refers only to whatever disciplinary matters may have already come before the council. We can talk about that further once we are deliberating this matter, but first I would like to ask if there is anyone here wishing to participate in public comment. Please approach, identify yourselves, and you will be given 2 minutes. All right, seeing none, Councillor Green.
I guess my question is, who is going to be the governing body of this new subcommittee?
It would be a committee like any other. If it is established, then it would be my job to reach out to councillors, solicit interests, and make appointments to that committee, including the chair.
And then who exactly comes before us in this subcommittee? Is it employees? Is it the directors? Is it the head of departments?
So it would be, as with any of our other committees, what actually comes before us is dependent on what gets put on the agenda. It would be the same stuff. It would just be anything that would already come before us and that would pertain to either HR issues or human services issues, meaning health issues. I believe the library would also fall under this. The intention would be that this would encompass the departments that don't currently have a committee that deals with their issues. I have a list of the departments that would be covered under this committee. It would be, the Veteran Services, the Library, Council on Aging, HR, and Procurement would all fall under this committee. It's a human resources and human services committee, because we don't currently have anywhere to send those matters. We shoehorn them into existing committees. So there is a plan in the works to get city departments giving biannual reports to the council, which I know is something we've discussed for a long time. There is now a plan in place to do that, but in order to do that, we have to decide which committees they'll be reporting to. And that was the genesis of this petition. I'd also invite Vice President Van Hazinga to speak to this if he'd like. He was in on the meeting with me.
Yes, so the intention here is to make sure that every department in the city has a subcommittee to roll up to. For instance, the DPW rolls up to Public Works, Police and Fire roll up to Public Safety. Right now, we have some orphans in some departments that just don't have a natural place to go. So the intent is to create a city council committee where they have a place to go. And then once every department rolls up to an appropriate city council committee, the goal is to just increase communication, to have those committees come before the councils and just give updates about how things are going. What are the efforts of the committee? What are the challenges? What's the path forward? What does the future look like in terms of budget issues, things like that? So the idea is to increase involvement and communication between the city departments and the city council, but in order to do that, we need a place for each city department to go. So this is sort of the last step to create a last catch-all for those human services types of departments.
Does that answer your question, or?
Well, the one department that I see in here that maybe still might be an orphan is the city clerk.
That is a good point. The city clerk does not have a distinct department to come, distinct committee to come to. I believe we did discuss that at the meeting, but I can't remember where we decided. Certainly, the city clerk will always be welcome to present to the council.
I just always share anyway.
Mr. President, if you let me know.
Go right ahead.
I forget exactly where we talked about it before, but that would be a natural for this committee as well, because a lot of the city clerk's job is dealing with interaction with the public and human services in that respect, in terms of managing elections, managing licensing, things like that. So I think it may be a natural process to just come before this committee as well.
Will these, if this gets passed, is this meetings that will be held open or in executive session, depending on what may come before this committee?
It would be the same as with any other committee. Most of the meetings would be held in open session. If some unique item came in front of the committee that required an executive session and met the appropriate criteria, then we could hold an executive session of that committee, just as we could with any other.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Fleming.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. My first question is, can you give us an example of what would come that we currently have on the agenda or have had on the agenda that would go to this committee? To sort of isolate what it is you're talking about.
So the primary thing would be these reports that we're trying to establish. The committee would hear from those particular departments that don't otherwise fit into the other committees, and then would report back to the council. And I can talk more about those reports as we go along. But another example would be recently the Legislative Affairs Committee handled a matter involving a conflict disclosure that had to be filed by a board member. It ended up being dismissed as moot, but that is the sort of matter that would also come in front of this committee. If a member of a city board had a financial interest in a matter appearing before the city, they have to file a disclosure with the city, and the city council has to basically approve that disclosure and say, we are okay with this person continuing to serve despite this conflict. That's one sort of matter that would come in front of this committee.
Okay, at a last meeting, it was told to us that this was actually the mayor's idea for this committee. I'm just curious why she isn't here to speak to it.
So this is a matter that I put forward after Vice President Van Hazinga and I met with the mayor. The substance of the discussion was how to institute these reports, The intention being to give counselors a way to get insight into the departments rather than having to ask all our questions at budget time and having counselors get, upset at me for saying, that's not what we're here to discuss. The idea would be we can get departments in front of us twice a year to give updates on general operations, on financial outlook, so that when the budget comes around, we can stay tightly focused on the substance of the budget and not have to feel like it's our one shot at asking general questions of department heads. When we did that, as Vice President Van Hazinga was saying, we realized that that most of the departments map onto certain committees, but there are some departments that just didn't. And so we looked at it, we thought about it, the three of us in the room, and came to the conclusion that it made sense to create this new committee, particularly as we all know, the Committee on Records typically doesn't meet, doesn't really have much of a role to play. So replacing it with this committee would give us that opportunity to have those departments have a home. So yes, the mayor was part of the genesis of this, but it's my petition, and I'm more than comfortable speaking to it. If the mayor were here, she would be more than welcome to speak to it as well, but this is a matter that I think would be good for the council, independent of the mayor's approval or disapproval as well. Does that answer your question?
It would strictly just be city council on this committee?
Oh, yes, it would be a committee of the city council.
Okay, all right.
This would have no involvement outside the city council. This is just a way for the council to better manage some of the issues that had previously gotten shoehorned into legislative affairs, usually legislative affairs. Occasionally, a few of the other committees would catch one. And I'm sure you've seen them on the agenda, ones that don't really fit the purview of a given committee, but we send them there because we've got nowhere else. So this is an attempt to solve for that.
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Walsh.
First of all, I will feel sorry that I can no longer give the report on the Committee on Records, but that alone. I just wanted to say, initially I thought, well, this seems like some redundancy, but after you've explained it, I think that if we can improve the communication from the administration to the city council and put us on a better, I guess, more knowledge about what's going on in each individual department, I think you've convinced me. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brochman.
First of all, if they go into executive session, any committee, I believe that it should be open to the full council and let the full council hear what the executive session is all about.
So that would, Councillor, that would come down to a vote of the council. If the council chose to take the executive session as a full council or in council as a whole committee, we certainly could do that. If the council chose to send it to an executive session of a committee, then it would be open only to that committee. That's just the way executive sessions work. But that would be entirely at the discretion of the council. And historically, we have always taken it as a full council when we need to go into executive session, because I tend to agree with you. The whole council needs to know, if we're going into executive session, what we're discussing.
I agree. I'm glad you agree what I agree. The second question is, we're not going to be setting any wages, are we?
No more than we already do. We would have, again, this is not intended to enlarge the authority of the council in any way. This is just a rule for how the council handles what does already come in front of us. So if questions of wages would normally come in front of us, they would probably go to this committee. But if there would be a wage question that would not normally come to us, it still wouldn't. We would hear the same number of wage questions that we already would be hearing. This is just a matter of where they get sent.
Okay. And on this committee, if I get elected, you can ask any questions. You won't be saying, Paul, you got to stick to the subject here.
Well, it would be questions pertaining to whatever subject matter comes in front of the committee, as far as the agenda is concerned. So if there's a question regarding a conflict disclosure, you wouldn't be able to inquire as to the operational, purpose of that person's job position or whatever. That would be a different question. But if, on the other hand, a question came in front of the committee regarding, whether to add or retain a particular position in a particular department, not a particular individual, that would not come in front of us, but a position, if there was a proposal from the mayor, I want to add a position to such and such department, that would probably wind up in front of that committee, and then you would be able to ask any questions pertaining to what would this position entail, what would how would this position be filled, any of those questions. So it wouldn't be a free-for-all, Counselor, but it would be a place where questions pertaining to these issues could be asked.
And we're not going to do any kind of disciplinary actions, none
No.
whatsoever.
Nothing that would not already come in front of the council, which is effectively nothing.
Son of a gun.
That is not the purview of this council, and again, this rule is not intended to change the authority of the council in any way, but only to dictate when something comes in front of us, where does it go?
Okay. All right, I yield the floor for now.
Councillor Schultz.
Yeah, I guess I have a question about the fact that it's going to be limited to just the committee members to ask questions. If the primary mission of the committee is to get biannual reports from various departments, the orphan departments, why couldn't we just schedule a council as a whole committee meeting so that all the councilors can attend and ask questions?
We could do the biannual reports in front of council as a whole committees. It's just, I think, with the number of departments that we have, that would become unwieldy very quickly, and it would be difficult to fit them all in if we had, ultimately the purpose of committees is to divvy up the work of the council and have those committee members be basically the liaison between the council and those subject matter areas.
Well, during budget times, you allow everybody to ask questions, and now you're going to be limiting it to about 5 members every time you have a report. So unless you allow other members of the council that are not on the committee to ask questions, then you're limiting the questions at that time. So I don't know if I can support that limit. I would prefer a council as a whole committee to hear the reports. So
the thing is, Councillor, the creation of this committee would not limit the ability of the council to put things in front of a council as a whole any more than the existence of the already existing committees does. So, for example, when the auditor comes to give the annual report, that would normally stand referred to finance. If the council chose, we could still send that to a council as a whole. But it would already, just under our current rules, be sent to finance if the council doesn't take a separate vote to send it to council as a whole. All this does is close the loop on those last orphan departments. It doesn't actually change the fact that most departments would already have a committee assignment native to them. So the issue you're discussing would be still an issue at the discretion of the council, just as it is now. It would just mean that there wouldn't be these few odd man out departments that don't have a committee sort of pre-assigned to them.
Just on Councilor Schultz, if you don't mind me interrupting, just for clarification. In committee hearings, is there any discretion on behalf of the chair to take questions from members, city council members who are not on the committee?
So that's the way we used to do things, and there was a legal issue with that under the open meeting law, where it was ruled in a different city that allowing non-committee members to speak and ask questions was effectively deliberation among a quorum of the council, which then wasn't properly posted and so on. However, there would be nothing preventing the chair of a committee from soliciting questions from non-committee members beforehand and then reading them into the record at the committee meeting. And again, there's always the option of a council as a whole meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Are you all set, Councilor Schultz, or did you have additional?
Well said, I just don't agree with the.
Okay, Councilor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. President. My first question would be, who would be tasked with now keeping the records if we are eliminating the Records Committee?
So the Records Committee already doesn't keep the records, they just review the records.
Of course.
And basically, all that would change is instead of sending out the minutes to the 3 members of the Records Committee, the clerk would simply send them out to the whole council. And then in place of our report of the Committee on Records, we would simply have, as the rule change outlines, an equivalent point at the beginning of each meeting where we would just have a motion to approve the minutes. It would be essentially the same process, especially given that in the current technological era, most of the time, if there's an error in the minutes, we don't handle it via a motion in council anyway. Someone just sends a note to the clerk and says, hey, I noticed a typo, and that gets fixed with an updated version of the minutes. Certainly, again, if there were ever any issue where we felt that the minutes did need to be discussed in open session, that could be done. In fact, it would be a matter that would just come in front of the council at the time for approval of the minutes. But the process would basically be unchanged. It would only be the nomenclature that changes.
Okay. And so for your order here, the committee whom shall be referred all questions pertaining to the staffing of city departments and the remuneration, benefits, and discipline of city employees. But now we're saying that there will be no changes to salary, benefits, discipline, staffing. So what exactly is the jurisdiction of this committee? Because right now, I kind of see us creating what we have for public safety and public works, where we're doing the same work in both committees. And I also think that there's going to be some conflict of, well, should this actually stay in legislative committee, legislative affairs, or should it go to this public human services committee? I find it very vague. And I also, I don't have an issue communicating with departments. I find them to be incredibly responsive. You know, some are better than others, I won't lie. But for the most part, they're available, they're responsive. And I find it to be an effective way to communicate privately, phone or showing up at their offices. I understand the intent, but I don't think this petition for me is hitting the mark. And I guess we're getting into deliberations now, so let me ask some more questions. You know, finance, yeas or nays to spending, right? Public works, yeas or nays to decisions for DPW work that's going to go in and what's going to be approved. I don't see this committee ever taking a vote.
So it would be fairly rare that the committee would take a vote, just like economic development fairly rarely takes an actual vote and usually just receives reports and then passes them along to the council. The instances in which this committee would actually vote on something would be rare. And as far as the description, I have since looked over that description and had conversations with various people. And I would like, if this does move forward, I would like to amend the proposed description of the scope so that it better describes what we've been discussing and doesn't inadvertently cause anyone to believe that the council is going to be taking on disciplinary issues beyond our current scope. I would suggest that the scope of this committee would be defined basically by reference to the departments that it would be interfacing with. Committee on Human Resource or on Human Services, consisting of 5 members to whom shall be referred all questions pertaining to the following departments within the city. And that way, there's no overlap with public safety and public works. Public works takes public works, public safety takes police and fire. And this new committee would take a completely different set of departments. But it would provide, for example, if one department that came up that wasn't discussed in the initial proposal, if the health department needed to make a report to the council on some issue and it wasn't something that had enough interest that we wanted to take it as a full council, they would report to this committee now, whereas before there just wasn't any committee for Steve Curry to give a report to. It either had to come to the full council or we had nowhere to put it.
So because it's coming up, today's city council meeting, Commissioner Zemmel is here to give a report. Would this report go to this Human Services Committee?
It could. There are always going to be some edge cases where it's going to come down to either my best judgment when I'm putting together the agenda or the discretion of the council as to where we send it. And I think that the report we're going to receive from Commissioner Zemmel would be one of those edge cases that could potentially go to, one of 2 or 3 different places. But this would be an option for that.
Okay, thank you. I yield the floor.
No problem. Councillor Brochman. I'm sorry, did I see Councillor Fleming? Councillor Fleming.
Yes. So you said that we could not speak to the committee if we're not on the committee as a city councillor. Could we speak to the committee as a resident?
During public comment, you certainly could. It would be just like every other committee that we already have. So if a non-member of the Finance Committee wanted to speak during public comment to the Finance Committee, they could certainly do so, assuming that at the discretion of the chair, public comment is generally being permitted. They simply couldn't participate in the questioning and deliberation of the committee, because then if you have 5 members on the committee plus 1 non-member who's participating in questioning and deliberation, that's 6 members, that's a quorum of the council, and then we're in violation of open meeting law because we didn't post a meeting of the full city council.
And you would still only be limited to the 3 minutes you get?
Well, under our committee rules, the chair could set a larger limit as long as it was consistent for all members of the public who wish to speak. So an individual chair could say, I'm going to permit 5 minutes of public comment, or I'm going to permit 1 minute of public comment, or I'm not doing public comment at this meeting. That's already the case for all our committees. So the creation of this new committee would not change any of the rules regarding how committees are run or how non-members participate at committee meetings. This wouldn't change any of that. This would just be handled just like any other committee.
I yield the floor.
Councillor Brochman.
In reflex to Bernie and Melissa Fleming, I kind of agree, because if you hear a committee, like, let's just say, the building commissioner's coming in front of us tonight, if we all got kind of questions, we don't know what he's going to say. You're telling me to ask the questions before. So if I ask Beth, that she's the chair, and I start talking to her, but I don't know what he's going to be saying, and I want to dispute what he's saying, I can understand your point. I used to go to all the meetings at one time and sit there. The only thing we couldn't do was vote or say how we felt about it. But we could sit there and ask questions, as many questions as you want.
Right, and
We changed it because you wanted to say, not you, but Mike Krismerick said, we want to change this because we're in open meeting law. And now I'm going to say to you, I agree with Bernie, I should be allowed to come to that meeting and that committee meeting and ask as many questions as I want to ask, not be recognized by the chair.
So, Councillor, here's the thing. Again, first of all, the reason we changed that rule way back when was on advice of council, because they were telling us the way we were doing it was not legal.
Right.
So it's not something we can change back without being in violation of the open meeting law. Second of all, though, and the reason I'm going to cut off any further discussion of this particular topic, the question of participation at meetings, is that that is not proposed to be changed within the current rule. The rule that we're discussing, that we're deliberating here, is solely to create a new committee that would operate by exactly the same rules as every other committee. The question of who gets to participate and how at our committee meetings is not on the table right now. We're not changing anything about that. So this committee would have no less opportunity for non-member participation than any other committee would.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll tell you this right now. I feel like Bernie, and I think I feel like Melissa, and maybe Derek. I won't support it. I think it's time that we look at the rules come January 1st, and we start looking at that rule and decide what we're going to do as a committee, as a council. I think we're eliminating the things that we do. And I kept on saying, we're limiting democracy from free speech and how we talk. And it's a shame.
Counselor, again, we can't change that aspect of the committee rules. We have received legal counsel that we cannot permit non-members to freely participate in the questioning at committees. It's not an option that's available to us.
Come January 1st, we can change it, right?
No, we can't. You could put in the rule petition, but you would be putting the council in an unlawful position.
I disagree with you. I talked to the city solicitor, and she told me entirely different. And she said she was going to talk to you. So I
Well,
disagree with you.
If she talks with me and tells me that it's okay, then we can revisit that subject. But for tonight, we're not talking about who
I understand.
participates at
So,
committees.
well, I want you to know how I'm going to vote. And the answer is no.
Okay. Does anyone else have it? Councillor Cragan.
Thank you. So in 2015, we proposed an economic development subcommittee. And I was on the school committee at the time, and I watched this with great interest at the inauguration of the new mayor. And the council was resistant to this. And they were resistant to the implementation, perhaps Mary Jo remembers this. They were resistant to the implementation of a subcommittee because one member said, oh, well, that's too much government. That's too much interference. Whereas it was very clear, and it was made additionally clear to members of the council, that this wasn't any of that. This was further communication. And whereas the Economic Development Department didn't have a member, like members of the City Council to report to, this actually facilitated communication and made communication better over the long term. And it seems to me, especially where 24 hours of all of our lives and those of the people watching and out in the audience, went into the budget hearings in June over 6 meetings, 4-hour meetings. It seems to me that implementing this system, let's try it out. If we don't like it, we can say we're going to vote against it, we're going to remove it, right? I mean, I'm assuming that we have that option. But if this means that departments can come to us while the year is unfolding, so it's not like this, this blockage that happens in June, and we're looking at everything from travel expenses to, contracted raises, that this actually gives our department heads more of an opportunity to communicate with us. That's how I see it. When I spoke to you, like over the past several months, it seemed like this is how I'm interpreting it. Please tell me if I am incorrect or exaggerating or don't have a clear handle. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate.
So
And
we
the
will-
council would have the ability both to rescind the committee if it doesn't work and/or to keep the committee in place but send matters to a committee of the whole on a case-by-case basis.
So there would be an opportunity, if I may.
Go ahead, you still have the floor. I was
Thank
just
you.
answering your question.
So the members of the city council could absolutely ask further questions outside the purview of human resources within the context of council as a whole. And maybe we'd all get through June without 24 hours of meetings over 6 meeting days. That's tough. That's been part of our culture. Now, I know Gardner doesn't have super long meetings having to do with their council. I know that Leominster, our sister city, ditto. We have our culture and our way of doing things. But I do know that implementing Economic Development Subcommittee back in 2015 was a huge boon for the city council and the Economic Development Department. And it sounds to me like this is going to benefit every department. And if it doesn't, we'll say, you know what, we tried it, didn't work. But getting more communication with department heads, I can see that being a real plus for not only us, but the people watching these meetings who might have questions about police, fire, DPW, library, clerk, of course, and what we're doing. So I yield the floor, and I will be in support.
Thank you. Councilor Schultz.
I agree with Councilor Cragan that we need more communication. I just think that all of the council members should be involved in that communication. Now, tonight, we took committee as a whole committee meeting before the council meeting, then we recessed and went back and forth, but we could easily, if the primary mission of this committee is to get those biannual reports, why couldn't we do that? We have how many? We have 2 council meetings a month. We could have the departments come in and as a council, and then everybody on the council has an opportunity to ask questions. And Councilor Boschman made that point that if you're not on the committee and the only time you don't have the questions beforehand, the deliberations, then you can ask the questions while the deliberations are happening. So I agree with Councilor Boschman, and I also agree with Councilor Cragan. But I don't think we need this committee. I think we can just use a council as a whole committee meeting to accomplish the goal that you want. I yield the floor.
Councilor Fleming.
Yes, Councilor Cragan just made a point that I think I've got to make a point based on what she said, that after so long, if it's not working, we can rescind it. I believe that was the same argument made when we took on the city solicitor, that it was going to cost us more money than anticipated, that we would have that vote again, which never came about. And I don't believe that vote. So, based on what I'm hearing tonight, I think a council at a whole committee meeting would be the best way to tackle this, so that we can all be involved in the conversation and ask direct questions.
All right. Well, seeing as Councilor Van Hazenga.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it is a typical and normal legislative process to have committees in the legislative body. That it's not, I don't think it's very effective governance for the entire city council to hear every single item together. That's why we have committees, to break up the workload, to have different forums where different areas can be presented and discussed and deliberated and sent back to the council. I think this proposal doesn't change that. All it does is look at whether we have the right committees in place. It doesn't change the process in which we interact with petitioners. It just adds a committee to try to make sure everyone has a home in terms of the city. So I hear the concerns about how things are run in terms of non-committee member participation. I understand that, but it's a normal process to have committees. Some councilors are on committees and some aren't. That's just how it works. That's how it works in the city council. It's how it works in other cities. It's how it works in our congressional legislative body. That's just how these types of bodies handle the work. And I think there may be concern about that, but I think it's just, it's a normal process. This isn't anything atypical.
Thank you. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. President. My understanding is that even if we form this committee, that does not stop anyone on the council from approaching, as items are posted on the agenda for that committee, it doesn't stop anyone on the council from going to that department head and asking that department head about the item on the agenda.
Sure.
Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. I yield the floor.
Seeing as it requires a 2/3 vote to change the rules of the city council, and seeing as it seems exceedingly unlikely that there is 2/3 in favor this evening, I would like to ask for a motion to give this leave to withdraw so as to not vote it down outright and bar it from being raised again for 2 years.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second to give the proposal leave to withdraw. Do I have any Councilor Cruz on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to add, I had kind of mentioned that I kind of see this as, we're going to be duplicating efforts. But also, I wonder how the department heads feel about this and the employees. Right now, I like the freedom, and I'm sure they do too, to discuss these things on our own time, privately over a phone call, on our lunch break. For myself, I usually call it lunch. This is sort of duplicating formal efforts, I think. We always have the opportunity to ask questions of department heads. So we're formalizing a process that's already taking place. And I've just got to say, under the guise that this is going to increase communication, I don't see that. I genuinely think, and I know I won't speak for my colleagues, we need considerably increased communication from the administration. I'm a little disappointed that the mayor isn't here tonight. I'll be frank about that. The communication simply has not been there from the administration. And I think this was thrown to us as a little bit of a bone, and I don't think it's going to improve anything. I'd like to see genuine improved communication from the administration, not in the guise of this committee. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Thank you. I'll just say, regardless of where the idea originated this time around, the idea of having departments give reports to the council in lieu of having all the questions come up at budget time is one that I have talked about with many of you, and that has been asked for by many of you for several years now, dating back at least to the prior administration. So again, this is only intended to facilitate that, but again, it seems it's not going to pass, and that is the will of the council. Did you have something to add, Councilor
I
Fleming?
want to make a point that this has nothing to do where it originated from, and I think you putting that out there sends a vibe that anything the mayor proposes, we're going to vote against.
I didn't say that,
think that's-
Councilor.
But it sounded like that. It sounded like that. So I just want to correct that to make sure that is not the reason.
Not my intention, Councilor. All right, do I have any objections to the motion for leave to withdraw?
Nope.
Seeing none, it is withdrawn. And that concludes the business of the Committee of the Whole.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
I have a motion and second. Committee is adjourned.